December 31st, 2006. The British government makes a final payment to the United States Treasury. The amount is relatively small. The significance is enormous. This payment closes the books on World War II Lend-Lease debt, 61 years after Hitler died, 61 years after victory in Europe. British taxpayers were still paying America for the privilege of not being conquered by Nazis. Think about that. 2 full generations born, lived, and paid taxes to service debt from a war their grandparents fought. The empire that ruled a quarter of the globe in 1939 was still making payments to its supposed ally in the 21st century. This wasn't charity. This wasn't the arsenal of democracy generously helping freedom survive. This was the largest foreclosure operation in history. A systematic asset seizure disguised as friendship. A hostile takeover of a dying empire by an ascending superpower. The story you learned in school is propaganda. Roosevelt's garden hose, American generosity, saving Britain from darkness. The special relationship, allies fighting together for liberty. The financial reality? America saw an opportunity. Britain was bankrupt, desperate, and had assets worth looting. So America did what any vulture capitalist does, extracted maximum value while the victim was weak, took ownership of strategic assets, and restructured the relationship to ensure permanent advantage. This is the real story of Lend-Lease, not a tale of Allied solidarity, a case study in how empires die, and who profits from the estate sale. December 1940. Winston Churchill writes a letter to Franklin Roosevelt. It's not a diplomatic correspondence between equals. It's a bankruptcy filing from a client state to its creditor. The message is simple and devastating. Britain is out of money, completely, totally. The treasury is empty. The gold reserves are gone. The ability to continue fighting exists for maybe weeks, not months. Britain entered the war as the wealthiest empire on Earth, controlled global trade routes, owned a quarter of the world's territory, had centuries of accumulated wealth. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. 18 months of war burned through it all. Why? Because Britain tried to fight a modern industrial war with an antiquated financial system. They were buying American weapons, American supplies, American everything, paying cash, draining reserves to keep the factories running and the military supplied. The cash and carry policy was bleeding them dry. America wasn't giving Britain anything. They were selling at full price, demanding immediate payment in gold or dollars. Britain was liquidating centuries of imperial wealth to buy survival 1 month at a time. By December 1940, it's over. The vaults are empty. The ability to pay has evaporated. Without American supplies, Britain falls. Without American credit, Britain surrenders. Churchill knows this, Roosevelt knows this, and Roosevelt smells blood in the water. Churchill's letter is begging, desperate. He frames it diplomatically, but the subtext is clear. We're broke. We need help. Name your price. Roosevelt's price? Everything Britain has left. Not out of malice, out of opportunity. America is watching the British Empire collapse in real time. This is a once-in-a-millennium chance to restructure global power, to take Britain's place as the dominant force in global commerce, to acquire strategic assets at fire sale prices, and they're going to take it, every bit of it. But first, they need to make sure Britain is actually as broke as Churchill claims. Time to send in the auditors. Enter Henry Morgenthau Jr., United States Secretary of the Treasury. Not a diplomat, not a general, an accountant with the power of the American government behind him. Morgenthau's job: audit Britain's finances, verify they're truly bankrupt, and extract every remaining asset before extending new credit. He approaches this task not as an ally helping a friend, but as a creditor auditing a debtor. Britain gets treated like a failing corporation seeking emergency loans. And Morgenthau is the bankruptcy trustee liquidating assets. First demand: prove you're actually broke. Show us your books. Every asset, every reserve, every investment. Complete financial transparency. Britain complies. They have no choice. The audit reveals what Churchill already admitted: they're finished. But Morgenthau finds the remaining assets. Not enough to keep fighting, but enough to be worth seizing. Operation Fish, the largest movement of physical wealth in history. $7 billion in gold bullion, securities, and valuables, shipped from Britain to North America, to New York, to Fort Knox, transferred to American custody. This wasn't Britain storing assets for safekeeping. This was collateral seizure. America taking physical possession of British wealth before extending credit. The gold didn't stay in British vaults with American guards. It went to American vaults under American control. Britain is literally being stripped of its remaining treasure to pay for weapons to defend itself. The empire that funded the world is now liquidating the family silver to survive another month. But Morgenthau isn't done. Physical gold is one thing. Britain still owns companies, assets abroad. Income-producing enterprises. Those need to be liquidated too. American Viscose, a British-owned company operating in the United States. Massive, profitable, worth over $100 million at market rates. Morgenthau demands it. Sell American Viscose. Use the proceeds to pay for weapons. Not later. Now, Britain tries to negotiate. The company is worth more than America is offering. Market value is being ignored. This is a forced sale at bankruptcy prices. Doesn't matter. Sell it or the weapons stop coming. Britain gets $54 million. The company is worth at least twice that. The money goes directly to the US Treasury. Britain never sees it. It's just credited against their weapons tab. This is asset stripping. This is vulture capitalism. This is what happens when you're desperate and your creditor knows it. You take the offer because the alternative is worse. And America isn't done. There are more assets to seize. Britain still controls something America desperately wants: naval bases, strategic positions throughout the Atlantic and Caribbean that would give America unchallenged dominance in the Western Hemisphere. For a century, Britain maintained these bases as part of imperial defense: Bermuda, Bahamas, Jamaica, Trinidad, British Guiana, Antigua, St. Lucia, Newfoundland. These weren't just military installations. They were the infrastructure of British naval supremacy. America makes an offer: 50 destroyers in exchange for 99-year leases on these bases. Let's be clear about what's being exchanged here. The destroyers are obsolete, old, some barely functional. They're being decommissioned anyway. America is trading military scrap. The bases are the most strategically valuable real estate in the Atlantic. Control of these positions means control of the hemisphere, control of shipping lanes, control of the approaches to the Americas. Britain is trading crown jewels for trash. And they have to accept because they need ships. Any ships to defend convoys against U-boats. 99 years? Not a sale, a lease. But a lease so long it might as well be permanent. By the time these leases expire in 2039, everyone involved will be dead and the world will be unrecognizable. This is sovereignty transfer, disguised as a military transaction. Britain is ceding control of its strategic positions. America is acquiring them for scrap metal prices. This is when global power shifts. Not D-Day, not Hiroshima. September 1940, when Britain trades imperial infrastructure for 50 obsolete warships. The empire that ruled the waves just sold the ports. The new landlord is America. But the most devastating clause isn't about bases or gold. It's a single provision buried in the Lend-Lease agreement. Article 7. On the surface, it seems reasonable. It discusses post-war economic arrangements, cooperation on trade, mutual benefit. Read it carefully and you see the trap. Article 7 commits Britain to dismantling imperial preference. What's imperial preference? The economic wall protecting British and Commonwealth markets, the system that gave British companies preferential treatment. This was the economic foundation of imperial power. Article 7 requires Britain to eliminate these preferences, open imperial markets to all comers, specifically to American companies. Churchill fights this, understands exactly what it means. This isn't about free trade. This is about dismantling the economic architecture of empire, about giving American corporations access to markets Britain spent centuries securing. But Britain needs the weapons more than it needs imperial preference. So Churchill signs. Agrees to gut the system that made Britain wealthy. Promises to let American companies compete in markets that were British monopolies. The consequences are exactly what you'd expect. After the war, American corporations flood into Commonwealth markets. British companies, weakened by 6 years of war production, can't compete. Markets Britain thought it owned become American territory. And here's the kicker. While Britain spent the war producing weapons, America spent it producing consumer goods. British factories made tanks. American factories made refrigerators and cars. When peace comes, British factories need to retool. Costs money, takes time. American factories are already producing consumer goods at scale, already have distribution networks. So Commonwealth markets that just open to American competition get flooded with American products, while British companies are still figuring out how to stop making bombs and start making toasters. Article 7 wasn't about free trade. It was about transferring British commercial dominance to America while Britain was too weak to resist. May 8th, 1945. Victory in Europe. Celebrations across the Allied world. The Nazis are defeated. Democracy survives. August 1945. 3 months later. America cuts off Lend-Lease immediately, mid-shipment. British orders are canceled. Supplies stop flowing. The tap shuts off without warning. Britain is shocked. The war in the Pacific is still ongoing. Britain has troops committed. The assumption was Lend-Lease continues until total victory. America disagrees. Europe is won. Lend-Lease was for defeating Germany. Germany is defeated. The program ends. If Britain wants American goods now, they pay cash. At market rates, like everyone else, except Britain doesn't have cash. Just spent 6 years liquidating everything to fight. The economy is shattered. The empire is crumbling. India is about to break away. The pound is weak. Reserves are gone. So Britain comes begging. Again. Needs a loan. Needs credit. Needs help transitioning to peace. America provides a loan, $375 billion, at 2% interest, payable over 50 years. starts in 1950. This seems generous until you understand the terms. The interest rate is below market, but the loan isn't nearly enough to cover Britain's needs. It's just enough to keep Britain functioning while ensuring continued dependence on American credit. And the loan comes with conditions: economic reforms, market access, policy alignment, the normal requirements creditors impose on debtor nations. Britain isn't a sovereign equal anymore. Britain is a client state, dependent on American financial support, required to align economic and foreign policy with American interests. The junior partner in a relationship that used to be co-equal. The empire that entered the war as a superpower exits as a managed economy under American supervision, still proud, still pretending to independence, but fundamentally subordinate to American economic power. And they keep paying. 1950. First payment, then every year. Through recessions, through crises, through generations. British taxpayers funding a debt their grandparents incurred for survival. The last check clears December 31st, 2006. 61 years of payments to the ally that saved them, or the creditor that bought them, depending on how you count. This is the blueprint. The model America perfected on Britain became the standard for every subsequent financial rescue. Post-war reconstruction loans to Europe, same structure. Credit in exchange for market access, aid that came with conditions. The IMF and World Bank. Created in 1944 while Lend-Lease was still operating, same mechanics, loans to desperate countries, conditions that open markets to Western corporations, debt that ensures dependence. The pattern is always identical. Find a country in crisis, offer credit they desperately need, extract assets, market access, and policy concessions. Structure the debt to ensure long-term dependence. Call it aid while collecting payment for decades. Britain was the prototype, the proof of concept. If you can do this to the British Empire, the most powerful economic entity in modern history, you can do it to anyone. And America learned the lesson well. You don't need to conquer empires with armies anymore. You conquer them with credit. Lend them money when they are desperate. Take assets as collateral. Impose conditions that favor your corporations. Collect payments forever. It's more efficient than colonialism, less resistance than military occupation, and you get to call it friendship the whole time. The special relationship, the arsenal of democracy, allies standing together, beautiful marketing. Disguised as a hostile takeover so complete that Britain spent 61 years paying for its own conquest. This is how empires actually end, not with dramatic defeats on battlefields, with balance sheets, debt servicing, asset transfers, quietly, legally, profitably. Britain won the war, lost the empire, America won both, and called it liberation. We follow the money to show you what victory actually costs. Now I want to hear from you. When your country is facing existential crisis, is there such a thing as help without strings? Or is every rescue just a negotiation where the desperate sell their future? Should Britain have accepted American terms or fought alone and risked defeat? Drop your answer in the comments. Survival at any price or sovereignty over safety?